Hello, so I just finished reading this book, The Honey Bus by Meredith May. This is another one that was this is one of my wife's books. She bought the book, she read it, she said, I think you'll enjoy it, so I read it. I did. Initially, this one was difficult for me to get into, but I think that may just be communication styles. Women communicate differently to men. Most of the books I read and really enjoy are by men, although that was not the case with the book I read by the North Korean author, whose name I now forget. Sun Moon Park, possibly, was the name, which is called In Order to Live. That was a brilliant book, that's reviewed as well. This is the story of a young girl who was pretty much, it starts off and her mother and father, they seem to be a normal family, but her mother and father divorce. That was actually very, very, very emotional, just reading that, just seeing it from a young girl's perspective, and maybe, for anybody who's got children, imagining that happening to their child, and you get the questions pop up in your head, oh, how could a parent do that, and what about this, and what about that? So it was one that made me move around emotionally, which I always think is good. I think a book should move you emotionally, or it's got to teach you something. That's good. It's going to entertain you, it's going to move you emotionally. Entertaining and moving emotionally, and hopefully you can learn something from it. They're always useful. Let me start by reading the back of this book. There's if you want the world to become a kinder place, here is your book. Okay, yeah, I might read it if I read that on the back and I was buying it for myself. An unforgettable story of finding home in the most unusual of places. And this will give you a good summary, of course, the blurb on the back. Meredith May was 5 years old when she was abandoned by both parents. Her father left for the other side of the country. Her mother disappeared into herself. But when she discovered the rusted old bus where her grandpa kept bees, her world changed forever. The bees became a guiding force in Meredith's life. As her grandpa explained the sacrifices bees make for their colony and the bonds which they form with their keeper, Meredith discovered what family really means. Part coming-of-age story, part beekeeping odyssey combined with spellbinding nature writing, The Honey Bus is an extraordinary story of a girl who journeyed into the hive and found herself. Yeah, good summary. Do I like the book? Yes. Did it take me a while to get into it? Yes. Am I glad I read it and would I recommend it to people? Yes. So you've got there are parts in the story where I just said to my wife, man, her mother was fucked up. Her mother was a mess. But then later you realize why. And as I was reading it, I got an idea that maybe, she hadn't come from such a good place herself. You can just get that. Okay, look, I studied psychology, but I think you can just get that from observing life. If somebody's got messed up parents, they probably become a messed up parent themselves, more likely than somebody who didn't have messed up parents, although it's by no means an inevitability. I don't think Meredith May ever had children, so you couldn't really use that measure on her. Is she a good parent? That's a sensitive area. It's an onion. You peel away the skins and everything, and there's lots to it. So in this book, you've got the relationship with her father. So he leaves. Thinking about it, I'm not sure you could really blame him. I think marriages should stay together. Am I a conservative and a Christian or a Muslim or but that's got nothing to do with it. I just think children have a better chance if they come from a family where the parents have stayed together. You learn a lot from that, and it's important to have a father figure and a mother figure, and you learn different things from them. You learn how people interact. I've seen a lot of messed up people, and then if you ever visit their homes, you think, well, no wonder you're messed up. Look at how your parents behave or don't behave, etc. So there's lots of themes that it makes you think. See, this book is good because it makes you think. I like a book that makes you think. It emotionally hit me a few times, so that was good. Is that well written? I think it's fairly well written. Although I'm probably a bit more critical when I'm reading things than I have been maybe a week ago, because I'm reading also books about how to write. There's a good one, I'll review it soon. It's Stephen King, On Writing, a Memoir of the Craft. You probably know already, but before he was a writer, Stephen King taught English, he taught grammar as well, he taught creative writing, so he knows a bit about it, and it's somebody who's actually gone on to prove he knows a bit about it, whatever the critics say. There's always the critic to say somebody's talentless or somebody's lucky, but at the end of the day, if you sold hundreds of millions of books like Stephen King has, then you probably know what you're doing, right? What's the point of writing? Is it to be read, or is it to be acclaimed a genius? who knows? Some genius will be acclaimed and also be widely read. Back to the book. Sorry, going off on a tangent there. The relationship that develops with her grandfather is really beautiful, and he seems like a very interesting guy. The other thing I got from this book was knowledge about bees. Bees are fascinating. There's so much I know about bees now that I didn't know, or I never would have even considered something worth knowing, like the fact that they communicate, they have their functions, they sacrifice themselves. Bees aren't aggressive. Bees are aggressive if you aggravate them, and before they sting you, generally they'll fly into you, bzz, bzz, and headbutt you a few times. They have different types of buzz as well, so they actually have some, what might be described as a language with which they communicate to each other. They have bees who go out and find good nesting grounds, and then they come back and they will communicate the address of that nesting ground or a place for a new hive or something with a dance. So they communicate in that way as well. It's like non-verbal. They navigate according to the sun. It's fascinating what bees can do. Really, really fascinating. I got that all from this book. And now bee populations are dying out, but without bees, it's very difficult to actually grow food because they pollinate. They pollinate a lot more, cross-pollinate, and plants need pollen to grow. So it's not just about, bees are a nuisance and bees sting, and I wish they were red and blue and not black and yellow or some other bullshit. But bees are essential to the food cycle. Without bees, agriculture becomes very difficult. Without agriculture, we don't have 70% or whatever it is of the food that we consume, and then human beings starve, and then we're in trouble. And at the moment, since for about the last 30 years, bee populations have been declining massively, honeybee populations. So that's something to consider as well. There's lots of possible causes for that, and that's still being investigated. So isn't that great? Look, you read a story, it entertains you, but it also gets you thinking along these lines, and it educates you. Oh, what's that knowledge about bees going to do for you? Knowledge about bees won't pay the bills. Yeah, well, fuck you. It entertains and it broadens the mind, which is what I think is really good. So a bit too much swearing in this review. As for the book, read. Why do I was tempted to say there, I think women might enjoy it more than men, but that's just because of the different communication styles. There are points in this book where I thought, it's not that well written, but the story and the message and the lessons about bees and family as well are what I think makes it a really good book. And it's an easy read. I mean, I say everything's an easy read, but it's 300 pages, 323 pages, so it's not a very long book or anything. It's not odiously difficult to read like some of the books I've read. Good book, nice choice. If you're looking for a nice easy read that will make you feel something inside, then I'd recommend it. And there's a relationship between her and her brother as well, which is nice, and her and her grandfather, and who's not her real grandfather, step-grandfather, and her nan, and everything else. And just the way she conveys seeing things through a young child's eyes, I think that's really well done. That's really well done. So, The Honey Bus by Meredith May. Okay? 7 out of 10. Good book.